Have you ever tried to make a magic build in Dark Souls 3, but quickly realized that you have to split your Estus Flask uses? Have you ever wondered what to do with your FP when you're running a melee build? If you've run into these problems, then I'm here to tell you about this miracle called Medheal. Now Medheal is obviously a healing miracle that costs 55 FP to cast, which is twice as much as Heal Aid, but only 10 more than a heal. This makes it possibly better to use Heal Aid, but never better to use Heal. Personally, I prefer Medheal over Heal Aid because it is a one-time larger heal for low investment. Also, Great Heal requires 25 Faith, which is a substantial increase. Let me start by saying the worst part of Medheal is that it requires 15 Faith. So you'd be thinking you would have to put a couple of points in Faith just for this miracle. And maybe you don't want to do that on your sorcerer or quality build. And if you're like me, then your low-level masterpiece can't afford any sort of stat changes. But that's where the Priestess Ring comes in. This ring boosts your faith level by 5 while it's equipped, and it's really easy to get compared to the other stat-boosting rings, except maybe the Knight's Ring, but you can even get it early by defeating the Dancer, Osiris, and Champion Gundyr, all before Vort. Just spend 1,000 souls at the Dark Firelink Shrine, Ash Handmaiden, or straight up murder her to get it for free. Although Medheal is only available after freeing Irina and giving her the Divine Braille Tomb from the Roads of Sacrifice, which requires you to beat Vort anyway. With the Priestess Ring, you can just have 10 Faith until you want to heal, then switch a ring to the Priestess Ring to be able to cast Medheal. Though of course you don't want to do that mid-fight, so it's a good idea to see this as a reason to back off from your opponents instead of healing in their face. With 10 Faith, you can also use a Priest's Chime for the weapon art, which heals slowly over time. Due to the Chime's weapon art being a weapon art, it also has the ability to be used at just half of the FP requirement. So if you have a little leftover FP, you can still use it for a teeny pick-me-up. Speaking of FP, let me tell you more about Ashen Estus. The Ashen Estus Flask is normally avoided due to how it forces you to split your normal Estus charge with the Ashen Estus charge, and also due to how magic kind of sucks in general. But if you are an invader and a white, gold, red, purple, or Covenant Phantom dies, while you have less than full Estus, then you normally get 1 Estus Flask charge back. But actually, if you have an Ashen Estus Flask charge that can be filled during that moment, then you get 1 normal Estus and 1 Ashen Estus. Blue Phantoms give you 2 of both. What that means is you can use Medheal to potentially get 2 heals from every Phantom kill. But that's not all, because a fully upgraded Ashen Estus Flask heals you for 200 focus points. And Medheal only costs 55 focus points, meaning you could get 3 heals per Ashen Estus Flask with enough attunement. Though I would say you should never have more than 2 Ashen Estus Flasks unless you're a magical glass cannon build who doesn't care about their life. Now, if we're talking FP, then of course attunement affects how much FP you have, and maybe you don't want to level that up either, and that's fine, but I'll tell you at 14 attunement, you'll have 114 FP, which is the lowest you can have to be able to cast Medheal twice, and it also gives you a second attunement slot. But I've blabbed enough about how I feel about Medheal, so here's some useful miracle tips you can use with similar stat investments. Earlier I talked about how at 10 Faith, you can use a Priest's Chime weapon art for a tiny heal that costs a measly 13 FP, or a minimum of 7 FP, but only when that's all the FP you have left. You can also use the Sacred Chime of Philionor's weapon art at 18 Faith, which has the unique effects of buffing allies with the region as well, which includes hostile NPCs as an invader. It also extends the width of some miracles, including Projected Heal and Vow of Silence. And it doesn't cause you to lose the regen effect if you switch to a different weapon, which is what separates it from other chimes. Naturally, you can also use the Priestess Ring to boost 18 Faith from 13 Faith, just for that, but it's less useful to do so. The reason that being able to use half the required FP for a weapon art is such a big deal is because of simple infusion, which allows you to regenerate FP very slowly as long as the simple infused item is equipped. And yes, they do stack. But for more things that restore FP, you can also use the Executioner's Greatsword, which restores FP by 7 per enemy killed, even if you're an invader and the host is the one killing the enemies. The Handmaid's Dagger is also an option, which restores 1 or 2 FP per successful hit with it, but that is a really bad idea as an invader due to how close you would have to be to gain that benefit when you could be doing damage instead. The Aldrich Sapphire also restores 15 FP, but only for every riposte or backstab, which is somewhat rare and risky for how little it gives. At 10 Faith and 14 Attunement, you also have the option of using Tears of Denial, which requires 2 spell slots and 15 Faith, as well as 100 FP. This means you can have it equipped and raise your stats briefly using the Priestess Ring to meet the requirements, much like with Medheal. But you can also use the Dusk Crown Ring to lower the FP requirement from 100 to 75 FP, and the Dark Moon Ring to have 2 attunement slots without the need for leveling attunement, which allows Tears of Denial to be cast with only 7 attunement and 10 faith. However, using Tears of Denial this way prevents it from being used more than once unless you keep the Dark Moon Ring on, which can be considered a waste of a ring slot and otherwise requires a lot of setup if you will be equipping and unequipping the ring and miracle this way. Another good miracle to have is Force. At 12 faith and 26 FP required, it is an incredibly effective way to prevent a gank squad from surrounding you. Force is a great equalizer where most battles take several minutes, and with Force, it may take only a few, due to how Force can just throw someone off a ledge to their doom and otherwise separate phantoms from their host. With 14 Faith, you can use the Sunlight Talisman, which has the most hyper armor on its unfaltering prayer weapon art, guaranteeing you to be able to cast Force no matter what is thrown at you, unless you die. Thus ends the promotional explanation of why you should have at least a little faith in Dark Souls 3. I hope more of the players who invade at low levels will be more inclined to use healing miracles and maybe a lot of single Ashen Estus. Though Ashen Estus is less necessary, seeing even a couple of miracles being used would be pretty cool. Especially Force. It would be really great to see a gank squad fall apart because one guy has Force. But alas, this is just what I think and have experienced, so thank you for watching. What an idea. That chaos spent You're lucky there's 2 of you. You still chasing me? No? Okay, cool. That's why Medheal is good. That's good content.